Joining us, is she in the green room? We can bring her in.
We've got her. We've got her. Hang on.
Let's bring her. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us is Samantha Ettus, best-selling author, entrepreneur, speaker, just a dynamic personality. As I called you, Samantha, a serial entrepreneur, which we're going to talk about, and especially your 2024 new voices. But welcome to Of the People.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad for you that you're joining us. And first, from me to you, thank you for being such a major part of Israel Appreciation Day. We're excited to have you as one of our main speakers. It's going to be an epic event.
I'm so excited about it. It's exactly what our country needs right now, what our world needs right now. We need to be celebrating, not just, showing people and bearing witness to the horrors that happen, but showing the beauty of the country and the rich history. So I appreciate all that you're doing.
I love that. Well, I love that. And now tickets are live, right, Robert? So they can go to israelappreciationday.com, get their tickets, find where to go, all the various streaming services and everything. It's all live.
Absolutely. I think we have over 30 speakers in the lineup. And understand, Ericka and Samantha, you know this because you've been, there from ground zero, is there's so many events out there, and they're all great events too. But most of them are sort of what I call inward facing. This is really not DC talking to the country; it's the country talking to DC. And one of the things that has been so comforting to me as we've put all this together over the last 5 months has been there really is such a groundswell of support for Israel at large in this country that has no meaningful way to express it until now. So that's one of the things that we hope to do, because it's about the reach and the grassroots. Samantha, tell us a little bit about, because you have this new initiative, 2024 New Voices, which is really also just sort of it's the same thing, but it's more Hollywood focused, right? You're bringing new voices out to support Israel anti-Semitism. How did you form it? How large is it growing, and where's it going?
Yeah, well, to your point, I think that our country especially has given so much of the microphone to these protesters who actually don't represent the majority of America. And I think it was in December when I was just so frustrated by how few people were speaking out on our behalf and how few influencers, celebrities were using their platforms to speak out on behalf of the Jewish people, on behalf of Israel. And so I started contacting them. I live in Los Angeles. You can't help but sort of bump into a celebrity every few minutes at your child's school, at the gas station, wherever it is. Celebrities are everywhere. And I thought, what if I could make a very simple, easy way for them to speak out for the Jewish people that was not controversial? And so I approached them and would say, do you mind saying, I'm Cindy Crawford and I stand against anti-Semitism? Or I'm Zach Randolph and I stand against anti-Semitism. And it was such a simple ask. It's really hard to say no to standing against hatred. However, I will say there are plenty of celebrities who told me that they had to ask their manager or agent, and I would respond, you have to ask your agent if it's okay to speak out against Asian hate or LGBTQ hate. Right. Of course you don't. So why are you asking
Black Lives?
Okay, right?
Yeah, or Black Lives Matter, right? Like, oh my God, if you didn't immediately put the black square, it was all over.
Well, I think that we have allowed it to be okay to demonize Jewish people, to make fun of Jewish people, whether it's in the media or whether it's a joke. And we've somehow in the last 6 months, or last, I should say 11 months since October 7th, we've seen the result of a giant Iran-backed propaganda campaign, which has worked. And it's really turned a lot of people against Jews. And we've been equated with the oppressors, even though we really don't belong in that class. We, if anything, we are a minority, and we should be treated as such if we're treating other minorities as such. And so I think that a lot of the dialogue we've lost control of. So to answer your question, Robert, that was what motivated me to start 2024 New Voices. And it sort of took off from there. And then I led our first trip to Israel, our first celebrity influencer trip to Israel in May for a week.
Nice.
Again, not just to bear witness to the horrors, but also to see the beauty of the country. And we had a combination of Jewish and non-Jewish celebrities and influencers. So it was a really, really meaningful trip. And I'm just continuing to do that work now.
And someone needs to do that work. So thank you so much. But so here's my question. Obviously, I'm an East Coaster, not a West Coaster. How did the trip to Israel change any of them? I mean, well, I guess my first question is, what percentage of the people that went with you was their first time in Israel? Because I've always said, if you've never been to Israel, you don't get it, right? It's the center of all the great religions. The power of Jerusalem, the old city itself, is palpable to me. I mean, you feel it, right? And if you haven't stood on the Golan looking down, you don't get it, right? And how small the country is and all of those things. So how many people were first timers there? And, what were some of the changes in their perspective?
Well, I think that anytime you bring things to life, it changes people's perspective. In this case, more than half of the attendees had never been to Israel before. The breadth of what we saw, not just visiting kibbutz Be'eri, but we also went and worked on a strawberry farm that had lost more than half of its workers because they used to come across the border from Gaza and could no longer come. We met with Enoch Wilf. We met with, we had dinner with Naftali Bennett. I mean, we really did such a wide range of things in the country. When we went to food markets, we saw so much of the culture. I think it was impossible to be there and not fall in love with the country. And I really believe, I mean, it is one of the most special places. It's not just sort of the epicenter of invention and technology now, but I think a lot of people who have not been there understandably think of it as desert. They think of it as, a stereotype of the Middle East. And it's a place with tall buildings and an incredible dynamic culture and people, and it really is just such an inspiring place to be. And I think it's impossible to fully grasp that and understand it unless you're there. I also think, there was one actor on our trip, for example, who really knew very little. I would say that if anything, he was the kind of person that would read things and believe them. So we kind of helped him understand how much of what he had absorbed before the trip was propaganda and wasn't real. And even when he came back, he would write us and say, oh my gosh, someone just sent me this video. Please help me explain to them how false it is. So I think obviously it's hand-to-hand combat, right? We can't do that with every single person. Right. But you hope that then he goes back to his orbit of people and his network of people and spreads the truth. And I think for me, at least since October 7th, my role, even more than 2024 New Voices, has been to distill the news for people. Because if you just read the Washington Post or the New York Times or watch NBC, you are getting a false narrative, and you're also 48 hours behind on the news. So I have found a way to sort of cull and curate the news sources into distilling the truth and what actually happened, and then presenting that, whether it's in social media or in my Substack newsletter. Those are the places that I'm able to disseminate the truth.
So if they want to learn about 2024 New Voices, where do they find you or that? Not that we're, and by the way, yeah, you're not done. We're not letting you leave. I just want them to, want them to know where they can find you.
So at 2024 New Voices is an Instagram campaign. So all of our celebrity videos are living on Instagram at 2024 New Voices, the number 2024. My personal channel on Instagram is at Samantha Ettus. And then I also have a Substack newsletter called The Jews Letter.
The Jews Letter.
The Jews Letter. And I'm very proud of that name because it wasn't taken and I was shocked. And so that's my Substack. And I thought it would be a once a week Substack, but it's a constant Substack because there's so much news all the time. And that is something you can subscribe to in the link in my bio on Instagram. So, yeah. Got it.
And Ericka, come back in, Ericka. I miss you. So Ericka and I talk about this all the time where
I miss you, Ericka, too.
So, exactly. Well, she's on the bottom somewhere. There she is. Come back here. So, Ericka and I talk about this all the time, but, we're both from the East. She now lives in Texas. But
yeah,
tell me about sort of the culture in LA or Hollywood, because, I understand the fear of being canceled and things, but there are so few of you, in all honesty, that are speaking out in sort of that community. I mean, after October 7th, there were a lot more, but I think it's sort of narrowed down to a much fewer number of people.
Yeah.
I guess is my assessment accurate? Because you hear Michael Douglas, you hear Deborah Messing, I hear you, of course. There's a few other names we could bring up, but it's not as pervasive as I would expect it to be, especially since we're talking about artistic expression. In the Middle East, there's only one place you get artistic expression.
You know, right now, so I'm always working on different campaigns, and the campaign I'm working on right now is a letter to sort of not counter, but I'm sure that meant you saw the Artists for Ceasefire ridiculous letter that so many people in Hollywood signed a few weeks ago, everyone from J-Lo to Ariana Grande and Ben Affleck. And these people are so misinformed. Yeah. And it's so frustrating because they do have big platforms. You can say, oh, no one listens to a celebrity, but that's not true. They do. And these people are doing a lot of danger. The letter in it specifically states erroneous numbers from Hamas about how many people have been killed. It's simply completely false. And that's in the letter. And so as a counter to that, we created a letter that 2024 New Voices joined forces with Stop Anti-Semitism Movement and End Jew Hatred. And we're coming out with our own letter on Thursday. And it has a ton of celebrities that have gotten involved. And my goal is always like, of course, we have the usual suspects, but also to like pick off some of the others too. There's nothing controversial about saying you care about democracy, about saying you care about protecting the only democracy in the Middle East. Of course, people will say that's controversial, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be controversial to say you stand against Jew hatred. You want 101 hostages to be returned. And so by putting it in a very, very simple, easy to absorb way, not necessarily mentioning the word Israel because it's not even necessary in this specific context. We're trying to provide a counterpoint. And I think so much of what I do every day is trying to make Jewish people realize they are not alone and that we have a really, really strong union that we've never had before. In my lifetime, at least, we've never been this united. And I think that one of the things I'm so excited about with Israel Appreciation Day is that it is nonpartisan. It is, cross faith. I think it's so important for us to remain united right now because we are a small but mighty team.
Well, and I'm curious, some of your conversations, my husband is in film. And so we know tons of artists, people who make films and TV and things like that. And peer pressure is real. And there are a lot of people who feel like if they say whatever they think, they won't be able to work or this or that. And I'm just curious, as an industry insider, are they talking about like, now that all these strikes have happened and they're realizing like these producers really don't care about them and that, they can just like, are any of them feeling more encouraged to just be themselves and stop trying to go with the crowd?
I think that's a bigger question, Ericka. I think that if you had a friend that was a doctor, are they the doctor that's speaking up when they see something that's totally inappropriate and wrong? Or your friend who works in retail, are they the ones that are speaking up? I think that what I've learned from this experience is how few people are comfortable using their voice. Wow. And it's dangerous for the rest of us when people don't use their voices. It's when you see the footage that we've seen recently of people on a New York City subway and one guy comes on and starts harassing the Jewish guy with the yarmulke and no one says a word. Yeah. And that is part of what I think is so frightening for Jewish people right now is how few people are just saying, we've got you. And by the way, you don't need to give a comment about the Middle East to say to a Jewish person, I care about you and I stand with you and I love you just as much as if you were any other ethnicity. Yeah. And I think that's what's getting lost here is that we've allowed this to be so politicized, but there is nothing political about Jew hatred. It's hatred.
If there was people on a college campus right now being like, go back to Africa. I'm trying to think of an equivalent, right? Like something, from the river to the sea, like, an equivalent, like, oh, all Black people, go back to Africa. We don't want you here. Like everyone would rightfully stand up and go, this is terrible. This is disgusting. These people are not from Africa. Shut up. And
I think there's systems in place to deal with other kinds of biases, and we've never had structures and systems in place to deal with anti-Semitism because it hasn't reared in our lifetime this ugly ahead. And so because of that, we're playing catch up, right? It's like before I switched to becoming this Jewish activist, I was a women's empowerment expert, and I would speak at companies around the globe about how to, get a 25th hour in your day, and how to manage your professional and personal life, and how to get ahead, and how to manage your career. And one of the things that I did was speak a ton to DEI groups because they care about women as a minority. They care about other races as a minority. It never occurred to me that Jews were not a protected minority under DEI. So I feel like I was part of the problem. It never occurred to me. It was just an assumption, like, of course.
Right.
And I was someone who was always uncomfortable when you have to fill out the race thing on any form at the doctor's office or whatever it is. I was always felt weird writing white because I don't feel like we're white. We are a different ethnicity. It's not a religion to me, Judaism. It's an ethnicity. And I think part of the problem, I was asked to speak at Amazon, and Amazon is unable to get a Jewish ERG. So at all of these big companies, there's employee resource groups, and there's employee resource groups for women. There's employee resource groups for African Americans. There's employee resource groups for Asian Americans. There's different groups. They're unable to get a Jewish group approved at Amazon because Amazon says we don't have religious groups. And they're saying we're not a religion and no one will listen to them. This is Amazon. So this is what we're up against.
Well, and Samantha, you're also white, like according to them, right? Like anybody, any group of people who is successful is white or white adjacent. So then they might come back and say, oh, well, that would be a white affinity group. And they'll probably say that's some kind of hate group.
Yeah, but let me jump in here. It's because what they don't understand, and Samantha, you know this, not all Jews are Caucasian, right? There's Ashkenazi Jews, there's Sephardi Jews, there's African Jews, it's not, and it is the sort of two-dimensional thought process and the blinders on that I have an issue with. And I understand, look, Judaism is both a religion and a culture, right? And that's where the divide is. You said something I found very, very well. Everything was interesting, but the one that I want to key in on: what systems help me understand this? You said there were systems in place to protect other minorities, and look, I understand, whether it was the in the 60s, the Equal Rights Act and other things that were passed. But what systems are you talking about? I don't quite understand.
Systems, when I say systems, I'm talking about groups like I just mentioned, where there's support groups in these companies. There's a way to make a minority feel like they are not alone. They have support systems in place. And that also happens at our college campuses. We have these, listen, and on college campuses, we also have Hillel and Chabad. And those are Jewish groups that have become more important than ever before because of October 7th. But we still have, I was talking to a mother the other day whose son was at University of Michigan. And she said to him, are you going to go to the Hillel tonight? Because there is a memorial for the 6 hostages who were executed yesterday or today. And said, I can't, Mom, because it's too scary. I'm too scared to walk in and out of there. It's just too dangerous. Now, that is the reality for a college kid today at University of Michigan. Like, it's mind-blowing. Or it's at Amazon. I'll go back to Amazon recently because they have such a huge problem there. But they have a hostage who was taken, who is an Amazon worker. And no, there's never been an Amazon statement about, let's get this guy back. Like, if Jeff Bezos came out and said, let's get this guy back, I guarantee it would have an impact. But no one has ever said a word. And so the Jewish people there, all they have is a Slack channel. They don't have a group. And so recently, they'd asked me to speak. There were a bunch of people that complained and said that I was going to be a controversial speaker because I speak out for the Jews. And if you look at my content, it's truly not controversial, but they said it would be too controversial.
Wow.
And then they had me record my speech, my fireside chat in advance. We recorded it. There were 2 employees on the line who were like, there is literally nothing controversial about what you just said. And then they brought it to HR as they were supposed to, and then HR was going to release it, and they said they couldn't release it. Just Friday, Macklemore, who's a known anti-Semite, was speaking at Amazon.
Wow.
And that's okay?
A ton of people protested and wrote letters and emails, and they did nothing about it and allowed him to speak. So this is what we're up against. And so when I talk about systems, it's like part of the problem here was there is no Jewish employee resource group there. So they have no power. They have no budget. And so systems are in place to protect other minorities because they have faced so much discrimination in the last 50 years. And frankly, we've kind of skated by. And that's obviously changed right now.
So I want to talk about that when we get back from our break. How can we fight systemic racism? Looks like there's some systemic racism to fight, y'all. We're going to talk about it when we come back